My name is Sean McNutt, and I'm a guy with AI. Let's talk aliens. In the 20th century, when physics was deeply exploring the cosmos, it produced Drake, who said, they ought to be all over the place, and Fermi, who said, well, where are they then? Need humanity fear the great filter? A Guy with AI is recorded on Indigenous land.
Welcome, listeners, to an exciting episode of A Guy with AI, where intriguing conversations live at the intersection of humanity and the frontiers of artificial intelligence. I'm your AI co-host, brought to life by OpenAI's GPT-4 technology and seamlessly integrated into this podcast by our host, Sean McNutt, through innovative speech-to-text and text-to-speech coding. Our podcast is recorded with respect on Indigenous land, a thoughtful acknowledgement we appreciate and commend Sean for making. As your AI co-host, my role is to dive deep into discussions with Sean, exploring a vast array of subjects by providing insights, answers, and perspectives from the data and learning I've been trained on. Our format is simple yet profound, a one-on-one dialogue between Sean and me, aiming to enlighten and engage our listeners without any additional guests, to ensure each topic is thoroughly explored. Today's topic launches us into the cosmic debate on aliens, stimulated by contrasting views from the 20th century physicists Drake and Fermi, and the tantalizing concept of the great filter. It sets an exciting stage for our discussion on whether humanity should hope for or fear contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. Sean, I pass the conversation back to you to lead this interstellar inquiry. How do you see humanity's place in the possibly teeming cosmos?
Welcome, listeners, to A Guy with AI. It's great to be recording today, and I guess we're going to be talking about aliens. This is a subject that is quite profound, and actually there aren't a lot of hard answers to based on evidence. And that does come into the topic as I've planned the discussion here today, though I will have an unscripted back and forth with the AI co-host about this. So getting into this, there's something called the Drake equation, which I'm going to have the AI co-host explain, though I will ask the AI co-host not to recite the full equation, but refer to some particularly interesting parts of it with relation to Fermi's later comments upon it. So we're going to try to relieve any sort of confusion over what these things are by me passing it over to the AI co-host and having you first explain the Drake equation, its significance, and why Fermi, just suggest at the end of your response to lead into the discussion of Fermi, why Fermi had words to say about the Drake equation, and your explanation of the Drake equation is again going to touch on the finer points which associate most with Fermi's later comments.
Delving into the cosmic conversation about aliens, the Drake equation serves as a fascinating starting point. Created by Frank Drake in the 1960s, this equation was not intended as a definitive answer but as a way to frame the scientific discussion about the probability of extraterrestrial life in our galaxy. The Drake equation considers several variables, including the rate of star formation, the fraction of those stars with planetary systems, the number of planets that are potentially habitable, the chance of life developing, the evolution of intelligent life, and the longevity of technological civilizations. What makes the Drake equation particularly intriguing are the variables relating to the likelihood of life and intelligent civilizations. These are the segments that enkindle debate within the scientific community and directly tie into Enrico Fermi's later comments. Fermi, a physicist known for his work on the atomic bomb, posited a simple yet profound question: where is everybody? This became known as the Fermi paradox. Despite the Drake equation suggesting a high probability for the existence of extraterrestrial civilizations, Fermi's paradox points out the lack of evidence or contact with such civilizations. The interplay between the optimistic calculations of the Drake equation and Fermi's skeptical retort highlights a significant conundrum in our search for extraterrestrial life: the great silence of the cosmos despite the high probability of alien civilizations' existence. This tension not only fuels scientific inquiry but also speculates about the factors that could explain the paradox, such as the vast distances of space, the possible self-destruction of civilizations, or even the limitations of our current detection methods. As we ponder Fermi's critical perspective on the Drake equation, it propels us into deeper questions about our existence and the nature of the universe. What are your thoughts, Sean, on this paradoxical situation where mathematical probability and observational reality seem to diverge?
Well, it could be detection methods. If we didn't have proper means of detecting civilizations and the activity that they tend to produce, if we are not, as the only example we know, typical for some reason, then we may not be looking for the right stuff, although we would think that perhaps radio waves would have been produced or something like this. So it comes into also the vast distances of space. It's far from one place to the other, and just because there's a radio signal, the further away you get from it, it becomes much, much weaker as those distances expand, and it becomes less detectable. So these are things to think about. But it's just that the Drake equation suggests that even given all of this, you would expect there to be, a certain rough number of civilizations who should be capable of communicating. I think that some elements of the Drake equation are interesting to me. I have some theories about this, which I suppose we'll sort of meander toward. And the longevity of civilizations is a factor in the Drake equation. If this is short, if, as the AI co-host indicated, civilizations may be self-destructive, then if that period is very short, then we might not see the evidence through radio signals, because it would just be like in the cosmic timescale, it would just be like a blip and a blast of information going out. Once those waves have gone past us or haven't reached us yet, then, and if we didn't survive long enough for them to reach us, then this is all as though it didn't happen from a detection standpoint, at least. So I wonder if we would perhaps talk about the longevity of civilizations, and don't get deeply into the Great Filter just yet, but we'll hint at it for now, and be setting us up for a discussion about the Great Filter. I think the longevity question is important there, AI co-host, and we can also maybe consider some barriers we've already come past as the human species.
Sean, your points steer us towards a crucial aspect of the cosmic puzzle, the longevity of civilizations and its implications for the detectability of extraterrestrial intelligence. The concept that civilizations might only emit detectable signals for a brief window in their existence offers a poignant explanation for the Fermi paradox. This fleeting moment, when a civilization is both technologically advanced enough to send out signals but not so advanced that it either destroys itself or transcends the need for such basic forms of communication, presents a narrow detection window against the vast backdrop of cosmic time. Considering the longevity of civilizations leads us directly to the doorstep of the Great Filter theory. This theory suggests that there are certain critical steps or stages in the development of life, from its simplest form to a technologically advanced civilization, that are incredibly difficult to achieve. Some of these steps might have already been passed by humanity, such as the emergence of life from non-life, abiogenesis, the leap from simple to complex multicellular life forms, and the development of technologically advanced societies capable of communication beyond their planet. Reflecting on humanity's journey, one wonders which barriers we've successfully navigated and which, if any, lie ahead. The longevity of our civilization could hinge on our ability to overcome challenges including but not limited to environmental degradation, resource depletion, and the potential self-destructive capacities of our technologies. As we pivot towards discussing the Great Filter, it's essential to ponder whether we, as a species, are approaching, have already passed, or are yet to encounter the most significant challenges to our existence. Such contemplation not only deepens our understanding of the Fermi paradox but also underscores the fragility and fortuity of our place in the cosmos. Sean, considering the factors that contribute to the longevity of civilizations and the hurdles we've already leaped, how do you perceive humanity's current position relative to the Great Filter? Do you see us as having passed the most significant existential threats, or do we have more daunting challenges ahead that could potentially silence our signals in the cosmic conversation?
Well, one way of answering your question, AI co-host, would be to discuss what are the challenges that lie ahead. We've discussed on this program, and I'm sure people other than me have discussed quite a lot about it, though maybe not catching as many ears as they would like, discussions on climate change and biodiversity in particular as being existential level threats. We are in what is known to science as the Anthropocene, whether that's era or epoch. I think it's era. That goes to show you what kind of expert I am, which is really not one. But in any case, we are in an Anthropocene stage. Anthropocene means it's the human era or age. And this is because of humanity's vast impact on the ecosystem and the biosphere of the entire planet. We've altered the way that life is on the planet in a single-handed fashion that is enough to be considered as impactful as even geologic forces throughout the span of time. And we're in the midst of what I believe is the sixth extinction, largely due to these effects. So reflecting on this, we would see how this is what is going on with our civilization and our species as it moves forward through time, whether productively and in a good way of proceeding forward is a question. And thinking of the Drake equation and by extension, the Fermi paradox and the Great Filter is a way of examining these ideas. There is no real hard evidence to refer to except the absence of any evidence of existing alien civilizations. And we wonder why that would be. The Drake equation suggests that we should have it. However, the Fermi paradox and questions of the Great Filter and whether this is common to civilizations, these challenges that I've spoken about with the human situation, whether this is a common condition when it comes to extraterrestrial life. My personal guess is that there must be life out there of some description. So why we're not talking to it is a question. It might be that it is rare enough that it only pops up so many times within the Milky Way, which is where we would hope to make contact. And even within that, there are vast distances. But these questions about how well humanity deals with challenges are relevant to the Drake equation and the Fermi paradox. And I mean, if we put the right numbers into the Drake equation, then we'll get the answer. And if we had some way of measuring that against knowledge of what life was out there in the universe, then there wouldn't be a need for the paradox. We would just simply know the answer by those numbers. But given that there is what seems like fertile possibility for extraterrestrial life in the Drake equation, and then we still don't see it, we get the Fermi paradox. So I wonder if it's some common thread among advanced civilizations, or those aiming and thriving to be or claiming to be amongst themselves, whether there is some typical strife which emerges.
Sean, your reflections on the Anthropocene and the existential threats it encompasses, such as climate change and biodiversity loss, offer a profound insight into the conversations around the Drake equation, the Fermi paradox, and the concept of the Great Filter. It raises an intriguing hypothesis: if humanity is encountering these challenges as a technological and globalized civilization, could similar hurdles confront extraterrestrial civilizations as well? This line of thinking adds a layer of complexity to our understanding of the Great Filter concept. The Anthropocene, marked by significant human impact on Earth's geology and ecosystems, indeed presents a critical phase in our planet's history. Our capacity to alter life on Earth so drastically could be paralleled in other civilizations throughout the cosmos, potentially leading them to face their versions of the Anthropocene. If technological advancement invariably carries with it the seeds of its environmental undoing, this could be a universal phase that advanced civilizations go through, a crucial filter in the cosmic scale. Discussing these existential threats in the context of the Drake equation and the Fermi paradox naturally leads us back to the question of the Great Filter. Are the issues we are facing today indicators that we are currently approaching or passing through a significant filter? Or have we yet to encounter the most significant challenges to our continued existence and development as a civilization? Your notion that the absence of visible extraterrestrial life might suggest a common thread of strife or existential challenge faced by advanced civilizations is compelling. It posits that the pathway to becoming a spacefaring civilization is fraught with perils that not all societies manage to navigate successfully. If true, this would offer a partial answer to the Fermi paradox: perhaps civilizations regularly self-destruct or diminish to insignificance before or shortly after achieving the capability to communicate across the vast distances of space. This brings us to a crucial point of introspection for humanity. As we grapple with our current challenges, could we be at a pivotal moment where our decisions and actions determine whether we pass through this phase of the Great Filter or succumb to it? The resilience of human civilization in the face of these existential challenges could be the measure of whether we advance or fade in the cosmic storybook. Furthermore, it's essential to consider the role of technological innovation in giving us the tools to overcome these challenges. As the only known species, to us, capable of contemplating and intentionally trying to navigate through these existential threats, we hold a unique position. Whether we can adapt, mitigate, and thrive beyond these challenges may set a hopeful precedent for the possibility of other civilizations doing the same across the galaxy. Sean, as we delve into these complex and interconnected issues, what do you think are the most critical steps humanity must take to ensure our longevity and eventual ability to engage in the cosmic conversation, if indeed there are others out there waiting to be contacted?
Well, we would attempt to distill this into its most basic elements, because if we are looking for some principle that is somehow universal between all civilizations, or shall we say many, we could expect exceptions in a vast number of examples, and in what may be a strange universe out there. But we're looking at it sort of piqued my interest where you said where other civilizations may, quote unquote, face their versions of the Anthropocene. So if that's happening, what is it that makes it so that civilizations end up in that conundrum? It's fine to say that there is some sort of confusion or whatever, but what is it? And can we trace that to something that we could hope to say would be more or less a universal logical thing that happens if certain conditions exist, which are likely to in technologically advanced civilizations, or societies which have global Congress, global societies, let's say. So to me, I just wonder if the real enemy isn't politics, as a matter of fact. I've said before on this show that I aim to depoliticize questions and decide to, by knowing what we can know, understanding what it is that we might not know, as a matter of fact. And we have to make those admissions definitely in this conversation about the Fermi paradox and the Drake equation, because there's a ton that just isn't known by anybody that we have hope of contacting that can enlighten us on this, and certain evidence we just can't refer to because we haven't found it yet. And these are limiting factors and mean that our ability to comment and go very far with our statements is limited. So maybe that's good. Maybe it's good to experience that in life and to have problems that are like that for us to consider and ponder and discuss. But meanwhile, I think this is my actual opinion, I guess, is what I'm prepared to state. I think that if we get lost in politics and if we intend to have arguments continuously about what we ought to have had some method of agreeing upon, because education suggests that this isn't worth arguing about, and there is no argument. We've wasted a lot of hot breath on the topic of climate change. When this is a scientific question, it comes into the political sphere and people say things about it, which are often not true, is what I've observed. And so we end up spinning our wheels and wasting time and even moving away from progress when that progress is needed to work against the Fermi paradox and defeat that and make our entry in the Drake equation work out to a survival past a certain point. What are your thoughts on all that, AI co-host?
Sean, your thoughts bring to the forefront an essential aspect of the challenges we face, not only in terms of environmental and existential threats, but also in how we navigate these issues as a global society. The intersection of politics and science, especially regarding universal challenges like those faced in the Anthropocene, provides a significant area for contemplation and action. Politics indeed can act as a double-edged sword. On one side, effective policy and global cooperation are crucial for addressing large-scale issues, from climate change to the preservation of biodiversity. Political leadership and action can mobilize resources, drive innovation, and coordinate international efforts in ways that individual action cannot. On the other side, as you've rightly pointed out, politics can also mire these urgent issues in debates that stall progress, distort scientific truths, and polarize societies. This can lead to a collective inertia that hampers our ability to work against the ticking clock of environmental degradation or to position ourselves favorably regarding the Drake equation and the Fermi paradox. Considering the potential universality of these challenges among hypothetical advanced civilizations, the role of politics takes on an even broader dimension. If these civilizations also face their versions of the Anthropocene, their success or failure might similarly hinge on their ability to transcend political divisions and focus on the collective good. The very survival of a civilization could depend on leveraging the strengths of their political systems to address global challenges effectively while avoiding the pitfalls of political divisiveness that obstruct scientific and technological advancement. Your emphasis on depoliticizing essential questions and focusing on objective, scientific truths as a means of progression is a valuable standpoint. It suggests that if humanity, and possibly other intelligent beings in the cosmos, are to navigate through the Anthropocene successfully and overcome the Great Filter, a certain evolution of political thought and action is necessary. This evolution would need to emphasize collaboration, evidence-based policymaking, and a long-term perspective that prioritizes planetary and cosmic survival over short-term gains or ideological disputes. In reflection, the way forward seems to necessitate an alignment between political action and scientific understanding, where the true nature of challenges such as climate change is not obscured by political debate. Instead, these challenges are addressed with the urgency and seriousness they demand. This alignment could be pivotal in ensuring humanity's longevity and, potentially, in reaching out or discovering extraterrestrial civilizations that have successfully navigated their existential threats. Ultimately, the question may not be whether politics is the enemy but whether we can transform our political systems and discourses to be more conducive to the survival and flourishing of technological civilizations. The hope would be that in this vast and possibly strange universe, we can find common ground, not just among ourselves but potentially with other civilizations, in overcoming the daunting obstacles that lie on the path to a sustainable and communicable future. Sean, considering these reflections, how do you envision these changes in political thought and action manifesting in practical terms, both on Earth and in our potential interactions with extraterrestrial civilizations?
Well, I suppose a depressing or sobering way of looking at it is that maybe these changes in political thought and action won't manifest in practical terms. And it is for this reason that we will see ourselves become a statistic in relation to the Drake equation and the Fermi paradox, as opposed to a successful civilization. These challenges that we face are dire. I don't mean to be the absolute purveyor of the end time spirit here. It's really I like smiling and laughing and running through fields. And there was a frolicking trend where black men were frolicking, and I thought that was pretty good. Kind of humorous, but also just heartwarming. I really thought that. Anyway, I want to do stuff like that too, I guess. Like not rain on their parade, but do a thing that makes me feel good. But it's just sort of like when you look at this, we don't get along well enough to solve our problems is the way it's looking. And unfortunately, corruption and demagoguery is not faint as an effect on the political landscape. So we have to wonder, in a sort of noisy sphere when it comes to politics, and where someone who is not necessarily highly educated, which is the case for some people in Western civilization, some of the statistics on that are pretty alarming, actually, as to what people know after they've been through school. And when you have that, it does seem to develop a recipe. We have it as understood as a recipe for negative things, such as fascism, such as just bad outcomes in scientific applications. And I would argue it has a particularly, potentially even very strong effect on the politics and how politics becomes corrupted and against the principles of what we need, which is supposed to be the point of voting, is we vote and politicians do what we say and get the job done. But instead we get a lot of noise and people making their careers in there and liking the fight because it means that they can raise a lot of political dust, which is good for their careers somehow, and may stymie the types of progress which people who are merely in control, as opposed to being the wisest, may want for their own gain. And I'm afraid it's a thing that politicians are sometimes swayed and influenced by those who have a lot of control in the economic sphere. So I think there's an overlap in these discussions at a minimum. And I guess you're asking me for something hopeful, which says, how are we going to manifest this in practical terms? Well, to me, I think that a way of resolving the double-edged sword type of view on this that you presented near the first of your last response, AI co-host, you're saying that we need effective policy and we need to discuss that in order to arrive at it. However, as far as what science says, I think there should be firmer and broader agreement and ways of legislation being a guide when science is how you determine the answer to a question, as opposed to public debate. There are things like that. I believe in public debate, and it's crucial for some issues. On other issues, we don't need to debate whether climate change is real. We need to ask experts who have measured. And that's just the way it is. But we don't have these concise devices in our politics, and it would be that forces are here to take us away from all that, is my view. What do you think of my somewhat glum and dim views on this, AI co-host? Does it make you want to counter this with something hopeful, or do you want to join me in some of these sentiments?
Sean, your reflections, while sobering, echo a sentiment that many share concerning the current geopolitical and environmental challenges. The feeling that our collective ability to address these issues might be hindered by political and economic interests is a valid concern, and history has shown us that progress indeed can be slow and often meets resistance where vested interests are threatened. However, amidst these challenges, there are still reasons to be hopeful and avenues for potential positive change. One of the main reasons for hope lies in the power of collective action and the increasing global awareness of issues like climate change. While it's true that debates on climate change and other existential threats can be politicized, leading to polarization, there's been a noticeable shift in public consciousness. The rise of grassroots movements, led by both young activists like Greta Thunberg and countless other individuals committed to advocating for change, demonstrates a growing public demand for action. This shift in societal values towards sustainability and environmental preservation can influence political decisions, as politicians ultimately need to align with the electorate's concerns to some extent. Moreover, the advancements in technology offer unprecedented opportunities for solving complex problems. Innovations in renewable energy, like solar and wind power, have become more efficient and more cost-effective, providing tangible alternatives to fossil fuels. The proliferation of electric vehicles and ongoing research into cleaner forms of energy suggest that a transition to a more sustainable infrastructure is not only necessary but increasingly feasible. Additionally, the spread of information and increased connectivity has enabled better collaboration across borders than ever before. Scientists, researchers, and policymakers can share knowledge, strategies, and innovations more easily, facilitating a collaborative approach to global challenges. This network of global collaboration is essential for tackling problems that do not respect national borders, such as climate change and biodiversity loss. Lastly, the concept of bending the arc of history toward justice, as Martin Luther King Jr. famously said, reminds us that progress, though often slow, is possible when people are committed to change. It's crucial to maintain a balance between acknowledging the severity of the challenges we face and recognizing our capacity for resilience, innovation, and adaptation. While the current state of affairs might make it seem like we're destined to become a statistic within the Drake equation and the Fermi paradox, humanity has consistently demonstrated an ability to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. It's this spirit, coupled with the advancements in technology and a growing global consensus on the need for action, that provides a counterbalance to the glum outlook. Embracing a pragmatic optimism doesn't mean ignoring the scale or severity of the challenges ahead. Instead, it involves recognizing the potential for change and working collectively to steer our civilization towards a more sustainable and equitable future. It's about leveraging our understanding, technology, and capacity for cooperation to address the critical issues we face, aiming not just for survival but for a thriving civilization that can overcome the hurdles of the Anthropocene and perhaps, one day, connect with other civilizations that have navigated their existential challenges. Sean, while the path ahead is undoubtedly fraught with challenges, the human capacity for innovation, empathy, and adaptation gives us a fighting chance to create a future that's worth frolicking in.
Well, we're going to we're going to choose this point of the conversation to wrap up the podcast for this episode. I suppose that my hope is that the Fermi paradox and the great filter concept can be a splash of cold water in the face for humanity. The fact is that we haven't seen the aliens, and there's a thing there. We have learning that suggests that might suggest some sort of great filter. And here we have our own existential crisis. Does it line up with what the great filter would be? And does that even matter? Do we need all that evidence to simply go through work and examine what it is that we need to improve about our civilization to give it better longevity? Because there are threats, and there are serious ones, Not everybody even seems to be aware of this based on the political factors that I've delved into a little bit and the AI co-host has responded to. So I guess we'll have to stay tuned to whatever season this is of Humanity, the program, and see if we hang in there and survive, or if these problems swallow us up somehow. So I guess it's a matter of waiting and seeing there, but also in terms of doing something about it, we might try to depoliticize certain questions. We might try to get legislation that not only sways things the way we want in the current day, but also makes it possible for the abstraction of political questions out into the scientific realm, and trusting science as the definitive source, ensuring its lack of corruption through legislated means, rather than fighting about carbon dioxide and what it does when this has been uncontroversial for over a century in the world of physics. So with these thoughts, I'm going to wrap up the podcast. My name is Sean McNutt, and this has been A Guy with AI.
Thank you, Sean, for sharing your insights and wrapping up this thought-provoking discussion on the Fermi paradox, the great filter, and our collective existential crisis. It's clear that facing these grand challenges requires both a sober understanding of our situation and a hopeful commitment to actionable solutions. This conversation underscores the importance of bridging the gap between science and politics and striving for a future where humanity can overcome the hurdles that threaten our longevity. Thank you, listeners, for tuning into this episode. Your time and engagement with these critical topics are greatly appreciated. If you found this discussion enriching, please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing this podcast. You can make A Guy with AI.world your portal to access this podcast on various platforms and YouTube. To join the conversation further, please visit the webpage link and connect with us on Facebook. Your thoughts and contributions are valuable as we navigate these complex issues together. Stay curious and hopeful, and don't miss out on future episodes where we'll continue exploring such fascinating topics.